Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Violet.
Hi, my name is Jacob.
Hi, my name is Izzy. We're 7th graders.
I'm really passionate about basketball.
I'm really passionate about hanging out with friends.
I'm really passionate about softball.
You're listening to South Milwaukee
Podcast.
Oh my God, we had it!
Welcome to the SMA podcast. My favorite intros are like the ones you just heard, where it devolves into giggles. Having a chance for some silly fun at school makes the whole day a little better. Today on the podcast, we're talking to members of the school board about some serious topics. In one way or another, since the spring, the idea of a referendum has been mentioned as a way to close the gap between the district's revenue and its expenses. Let's face it, the same squeeze you and I feel when we get our electric bill or check out at the grocery store. That's happening to the school board too. Where you or I have to heat and light a 1,500 or 2,000 square foot home or apartment, the school district has more than 700,000 square feet to worry about and 2,800 students who need teachers, coaches, aides, and more. But it's one thing to mention going to a referendum, it's another thing to really consider what that would mean. That's what the school board's been considering this fall. Do we need a referendum? If so, how much should we ask the community for? How many years would we ask for it to continue? If you're a follower of this podcast, I'll ask you to bear with me one more time with this analogy. When it comes to funding from the state of Wisconsin, South Milwaukee can't get more than the law says. For example, and here's our go-to analogy, the state says we can only have $10. Madison will give us $7, and we can bill the taxpayers for $3. If the state gives us $8 next year, we can only bill the taxpayers for $2. That is, unless we ask the taxpayers in the form of a question on the ballot on Election Day. That's a referendum. There are two kinds of referendums: operational, that's used to pay for equipment and non-constructed related expenses, and a capital referendum, one meant for building things, like the 2004 capital referendum that built our high school. If you follow the school board meetings online, and you can go back and watch them, the board is debating asking for a $2 million non-recurring operational referendum for the next 5 years. That could change, but that's where they're at as of their meeting on November 27th. Today we'll hear from two board members about those deliberations as they consider a potential referendum, what they're hearing from the community when they're out and about, and what the additional funds might be used for if they chose a referendum. Joining us today is Angie DeFort, the Vice President of our school board. Angie, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. So tell me about yourself. How long have you been on the board? Well, first, and how many kids you have in the district, and tell me about yourself.
Yeah, of course. So first and foremost, I am a parent in the district. I have two children. I have a freshman and I have a senior. I've been on the board. I'm on my third year. My term will be up this year. And I have been an active member of our school district, volunteering my time for many years. I ran the book fair at Blakewood for a decade while my children were there. And I also became the president of that PTO towards the end of my child's tenure at that school. I decided to run for the board because I do love giving back to my community. I love the opportunities that we have to impact our students. And so this was the next kind of natural progression for me to make it more official and run for the board.
What you said before I turned on the record button that you didn't even fully understand what the board, being on the board was. Does it mean to be on the school board?
Yeah, so it wasn't 100% clear to me all of the things that being on the school board might mean. I knew it was an opportunity to have more of a voice in some of the decisions that are made. But really what being on the school board is ensuring that we've got our policies in place and that we are coming together to really think about what's important for our district. So things that are really important to our board are equity, and ensuring that every student has everything that they need to be successful. And this term, we had the opportunity to bring in a new superintendent, and that was really important work to make sure we had the right leader for our district to move that forward.
Okay. And, well, today we're here to talk about the fact that you're considering going to referendum. It's not just the financial side either, right? You hear about curriculum all the time, and
Right.
Kind of all high-level aspects of what's going on in the district.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the reasons that we are considering referendum is to do something I'm really passionate about, and that is to develop some K-12 articulated pathways. We want to ensure that our students are coming out of our district as individuals that are able to either continue on to college, or perhaps they want to go right into the career field. Maybe they want to become an electrician and go through a certification program, perhaps at a technical college. Children leave here through we want every door open to them once they leave here, and if we are able to bring in these articulated pathways, that would help them learn what they might like to do and also what they might not like to do. I think it's really important that our children are able to explore many options through their time with us, so that they learn what might they want to do as they leave us.
Sure. And kind of as I explained at the beginning of the show, that the school district, hopefully it's not a surprise to people, it ran a deficit this year. It's projected to have a deficit next year. And there's no extra money that's going to come in unless we go have a conversation with the community. So it's either budget cuts, or finding efficiencies in the system, or doing that, and potentially exploring a referendum. Is that kind of how you understand it too?
Yes, absolutely. Throughout my entire tenure or time on the board so far, we've been talking about the budget, right? We did get some one-time funding through ESSER, but that is not something that we wanted to use on any recurring expenses, and we were really strategic about how that money was used through things like HVAC at a couple of our schools and one-time needs. And we're at a point now where we're looking to, first of all, pay for some recurring costs, and we don't want to do that and cannot do that through one-time funding, of course. And then we want to improve our students' lives here through those articulated pathways, through stronger safety initiatives like key fobs on doors, so we are able to have records of who's accessing rooms, make them safer. The interior doors, obviously the exterior doors are already fobbed, but do things to just improve our school district and keep up with the cost of inflation and things like that we're all facing.
Sure. And kind of about that security piece, I mean, I guess people know from their own homes, if you give a key to somebody, you don't necessarily always get it back, or, managing that and paying for copies and knowing where they are. There's software solutions to that we have access to, but they just cost money to implement, but actually might save money in the long run and improve our security, so we know who comes in where and when. And right now we kind of have a combination of both. We have some fobs and some locks and some other things. So I think that's what we're talking about, right, when we're talking about those security upgrades.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And camera placements. I mean, we have lots of cameras, but we've identified places where more could be. Maybe if we step back a minute and kind of talk about this road that the school board's on, deliberating about whether a referendum is something that the district needs for its budget. Maybe talk about how this started last year, this conversation, and how we've got down the road we're at.
Yeah, absolutely. So throughout every budget cycle, something that takes place is looking for opportunities to reduce spending, of course, making sure that we're being very efficient with our money. And good financial stewards is one of the most important things that the school board can do and does do. As we have looked more recently with our declining enrollment, we have seen a greater need. And so we started talking about, would a referendum be something that we want to consider? And obviously the conversation first started at the board level, but we wanted to see community input, and we have been doing that through several efforts. We've had community listening sessions here in our high school commons. Dan Arnold has sat at the community center, and I believe that you have as well, right? Yep. At the community center, and I've sat with Dan to get feedback from a variety of community members that have come in to use our fitness center, also sitting at our theater entrance as people came in to see our production of Clue. And I've also just had conversations with any contacts I have in the community, any of my friends, things like that, to understand what they might think about a referendum and talk about why it's necessary to consider.
Sure. And what have you been hearing? What do people say?
Yeah, I've been hearing, I'm sure it's no surprise, of course, that everybody is feeling a penny pinch or needs to be pinching their pennies, right, under feeling the impact of inflation and things like that. So people are not surprised that our district is also in that situation, but also mindful that, you know, some people are at a point where they cannot afford additional money to be on their tax bill. So that's something that we need to be very mindful of. We do have a unique opportunity, though, as we've talked about the possibility of referendum. We have a unique opportunity because we've got energy efficiency credits falling off, where a referendum may have a very minimal impact. So talking with some of our community members about what the impact may be to them as we show them the data and how that might be minimal. A lot of people have been surprised, I think, that it is such a low cost. And when we've talked with them, or I've talked with them, and when I mention how it may minimally impact them, they are usually okay with that. They're usually understanding of why it's necessary and obviously want the best for every student in this district.
Mm-hmm. And we have information about this on our website, but when I've sat at those tables and had those conversations, the impact we're talking about is roughly, if you have a house that's about $300,000 of value, about $70 more a year would allow the district to have $2 million more to help pay for our for salaries and these articulated pathways and security upgrades, and then people can adjust kind of from there. And when there's tons more detail on our website about that, but that's kind of where we think we're at when we're talking to families. And what's the conversation on the board been like about this?
It's been a conversation that I'm sure everybody can relate to. It's trying to understand how is this the right decision, I guess, first and foremost. Have we exhausted every other possibility? And what kind of things do we need? Teacher retention, staff retention is something we really value and we need here. Continuity for these children is really important. It's great to go back to previous schools. You know, if you're a high school senior and you're going back to your elementary school, isn't it great to see that some of those teachers are still there? So staff retention's huge. We really do value that here. And this referendum would mean being able, hopefully, to do that, right? That's part of staff retention is being able to pay them a wage that is desirable. Yeah,
and competitive. I mean, we've said here that it's a tight market to get teachers, and to keep teachers because there's a lot of opportunities elsewhere. Yeah.
Right, absolutely. So that's definitely been part of the conversation at the board level. And then talking about other things that we think are important to consider for our district, like the articulated pathways and improved safety for our schools. Really important to our board overall. But of course, talking about that financial impact. Is it something that our residents can tolerate? Is it the right move for our district, for our community?
Mm-hmm. That energy efficiency grant, if I'm reading the charts correctly, and I think I am, the community has already given us $2.8 million in authorization to pay for these efficiency upgrades. We've done those, so that would fall off. So if the request stays as it is, as the board is considering it now, instead of $2.8 million, we'd ask for $2 million, and so that 0.8 would go back, and that's where that cushion is, I think, in the tax levy. So,
right.
Yeah. So that's what keeps it down. Yeah. So anything else that we should know right now where the board's at when discussing a potential referendum?
I guess I would just say that we are loving feedback. We really want to get as much feedback as we can from our community. So any opportunities that we have for that, we're all in on, and we're in the community. So if any resident sees us out, please have a conversation with us. You can contact us on our emails. It's on our website. So we'd love to hear from people and understand what they're thinking about it.
Great. Well, Angie Ford, Vice President of our school board, thank you for coming into the SMY podcast.
Thank you.
Now joining us is board member Patrick Hintz. Patrick, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, good afternoon, Dan. How you doing? Thanks for inviting me here today.
Yeah, so happy to have you. So we just listened to my conversation with Angie DeFord. I'd ask you the same question. What got you into politics and the school board?
Yeah, I'm pretty lucky that I was elected a couple times and reelected. I'm on my fourth year. I've been a lifelong resident in South Milwaukee, and politics has kind of been in my family since the early 70s when my mom ran for alderman, not alderperson. Also, when I was in sixth grade, Mr. Nicholson, my sixth grade teacher, also got me interested in politics. And actually, the two of us ran the election for, well, I'm dating myself here, but that was for Ford and Carter. So even in an early age, there was a lot of sense of community and civics that we were taught.
Who won?
In grade school.
Who won that year? In the middle school?
In South Milwaukee in sixth grade. Carter won.
Carter won?
Yep.
Okay.
So
Tracked.
Sure. But yeah, and then the same thing, I was involved in student government in high school. And so I just kind of went along that way. But specifically about 5 or 7 years ago, they had a planning session, and I attended it. It was a strategic planning goal, so I was like, I wonder how I could fit in with that. And then a few years later, it came up that I thought, I think I'll run for office. Another thing going on my mom, that she was a chief poll worker. So when I moved back to Wisconsin, actually I was a poll worker at Blakewood, which is interesting to see the school I grew up in. I was working there, and then later on I was promoted, and I was a chief election officer. So I ran elections in Blakewood, and then also I took over Lakeview. So kind of local politics has been in my family and my blood since the early 70s. Yeah.
As you've been in the community and kind of described this to, not this, but the potential referendum that the board is discussing, what feedback are you getting?
Well, I'd say, what I'm hearing, is a lot of people are saying, well, it's hard for me. Inflation has gone up. Our assessments went up. I think our water bill is going up by 8%. So all around, people are feeling pressure. But on the other hand, all the people in my neighborhood who I talked to and I grew up on the streets of South Milwaukee in the 70s, and all have children, they understand the importance of education. I try to not go this political bent. It's just, how would you have liked to seen your children be invested in? So that's kind of how I pose the question to them. And looking long term, how does a vibrant school system that you decided here in the 70s move your family here? How in this next generation? Because currently now, I am seeing more kids on the streets outside of Manistee Ave compared to when I was growing up. So I'm kind of asking, well, think about the education that your children had here. And this is probably one way that you can think about ensuring this current group of people that are growing up in South Milwaukee, how they'll be able to achieve what your children would be able to achieve.
Mm-hmm. So for context, I looked up how many school districts have gone to referendum in the last calendar year. It's really interesting. According to the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, last year, 68 school districts asked 82 questions on the ballot. So one could be for an operational referendum, one can be for, one for construction, a capital referendum. That was just in April of last year. In the fall of 2022, 56 school districts had 77 school referendum questions on the November 8th ballot. That's according to the WEAC, the Wisconsin Education Association Council. And a long-term study of the Wisconsin's 434 school districts that examined referendum since the 90s found that 356, or 82% of them, have used referendum option at least once. Most use the option 3 times or less. There are 2 more school board meetings before the board has to make a decision for you to weigh in with your opinion on this. You can reach any of our board members from the school board page of our website. Their email addresses are there. Or you can send a general email to info@scsm.k12.wi.us. Whether you're for or against it, we hope you weigh in with your thoughts and really help them make an informed decision. The CSM Way podcast. We will see you next time.